what we're doing is taking a long look. Maybe it's a longing look for those of us who haven't been here for a while, at one of the great parks. Now, isn't that something? We're right in the middle of the Olympic Peninsula, on the northwest corner of the state of Washington, looking at Mount Olympus in the Olympic National Park. And if you've never seen these mountains before, well, you should know that not many people have been up here, or even down there, and it isn't liable to change very much very soon. The Pacific Ocean is to the west of us, and the Straits of Juan de Fuca are north, and Port Ludlow is over there towards the sunrise. And Seattle isn't very far away, it's 30 miles beyond Port Ludlow, but the chances are that the Olympic Peninsula will never pull in the big crowds from Seattle because there's a ferry boat and a toll bridge. It seems to make people stop and think. What we're going to do is find out what this country is like and what kind of people like this country.
Well, I was so awestruck by the entire golf course when I first came and looked at the golf course, because of its natural beauty and because of the variety of golf holes. It wasn't anything that I've ever seen before. It's hard to really point to any one area or any one golf hole and say that this is the finest hole or this is a nice hole. They're all nice. They're all different.
Yeah, I know. When you describe one, that just leads you off to the next one, and you keep jumping around until you cover. Well, maybe you won't cover 18 because you'll want to leave some of them out just to show that you're judging.
Right. Right. But each hole here has its own individual characteristic, its own beauty. If you took any one of these golf holes and put it on what I would call an average golf course, they would talk about that one hole. This golf course here is tough to say number 1 or 5 or 7 or 10 or 12 or whatever hole it is more beautiful than the other one, since each hole has its own beauty, its own characteristic mark. They're all different.
You had some nice shooting, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great. The plan is almost perfect, isn't it?
The architect, Robert Graves, did just a very fine job, and the golf course superintendent, Dick Schmidt, he did a very fine job, and he added a little of his touch with the architect's design, and between the two of them, they've just come up with a very fine golf course.
How many carts are there here?
Right now we have 35 gas carts, but next year we're going to have to go to 50 gas carts. We ran out many times during the summer, so we'll have to increase our fleet to 50.
Do you always keep the carts on the track?
Well, the only time you have to keep them on the path is during the winter months when we've had a lot of rain.
I mean, in the summertime you do run them,
yes,
you
in
do
summertime
really chase your ball.
Right.
Are there golfers who come from Seattle just to come here to play golf?
I would say a good 85% of our play comes out of Seattle or Tacoma. Surprising how much play we get actually out of Portland and out of eastern Washington. We're starting to pick up a lot of play starting to come out of Canada also. Vancouver area, Victoria area. We are only an hour away from downtown Seattle, which makes it very convenient. A person come over here, leave in the morning, say for instance, take the 8:30 ferry, they'd be back by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's really not an all-day venture or a day and a night venture.
Oh, it's a nice trip over, and then
it's a nice ferry trip over. The ferries are the super ferries, I believe they call them. It's just a nice trip.
You don't have to be a hunter or a yachtsman or a fisherman to come over here. All you have to be is a golfer, really.
One complements the other, and as much as if the boater is also a golfer, he gets the advantage of a very fine marina, a very fine bay to bring his boat in, and we have the facility and the people to bring people from their boat to the golf course to play golf, so they don't have to worry about transportation.
Do you have people do that? I mean, bring their boat over and
Yes, we have
their
quite a
golf
few.
clubs tied to the transom, and
They just call the sales office, and the sales office brings them up to the pro shop with their clubs, and they play, and then we call back down, and they pick them up and take them back down to their boat. The type of golfer who would come to Port Ludlow is the type of golfer who would like to play a really fine golf course. He knows it's tough. He knows it's a challenge. There aren't too many golf courses in the Northwest that he can play that are of this quality. Coming over, it's kind of a day out for him, kind of a day away or possibly a weekend. We get a lot of people who stay at our condominiums. Husband and wives come over, or groups of people come over to play golf and spend the weekend, possibly the week. During the summer months, we have a lot of people come over for the week and play golf. They do their boating and fishing and tennis, play tennis, they swim. There's a lot to do in this area.
I suppose anybody who doesn't know about the Olympics in Puget Sound has to be told that there's fishing up here. The rainbow trout, native cutthroat, steelhead, king salmon. This is a king we're bringing in here. It's probably one from the new hatchery pens that the state of Washington Department of Fisheries has set up, where they hold the kings a little longer. And once they're turned loose in Puget Sound, they don't go out to sea right away. They hang around the sound for a while. At the Port Ludlow Salmon Fishing Derby in February, the winning king salmon went over 21 pounds, and quite a few others were brought in that just missed 20. Port Ludlow is located in Puget Sound in Admiralty Inlet. You're looking at the boats in the harbor from the second fairway. And that's Port Townsend down below, about 18 road miles north of Port Ludlow. Port Townsend is a town with many examples of Victorian architecture. And 9 miles to the east of Port Ludlow, over the floating bridge, is Port Gamble. Just by coincidence, Pope and Talbot owns it.
My great-grandfather was the youngest son, and the gold rush in California was underway, so he came west around the Horn and set up a wholesale lumber business in San Francisco to sell Maine-produced lumber to the miners in the mines of California. His partner was a ship captain, Captain Talbot, who brought the lumber around the Horn to San Francisco, where they unloaded the cargo and sold it. And then in 1853, they built a mill at Port Gamble, Washington, by going back to Maine and buying a mill and disassembling it. What they did is to sail up to the Puget Sound and start to look for a mill site. And of course, the closer they could get it to the straits, the better off they were, because they were sailing ships and they needed the wind. The first place they came to was Port Discovery Bay, and then they sailed into Port Ludlow when there was already a mill there. The next spot was Port Gamble. Port Gamble is the oldest continuous operating sawmill in North America. Of course, the mill has been modernized during the years, but the town has pretty much remained exactly as it was. It's a company-owned town, and the company has recently been restoring the town to its original appearance. We've been repainting the houses and changing some of the architecture of the houses to reflect what they originally looked like. In addition, we've spent a considerable amount of money getting rid of all the power lines and erecting street lighting similar to that used in the 1850s.
As an early Port Ludlow.
As an early Port Ludlow.
Port Ludlow today is a village of winding streets, homes that fit the trees and the hills and the bay, A village where there's lots to do around nets of different kinds, riding a bike on the special bike trails, or combing the beaches, or assembling in huddles of all sizes. Some skippers anchor their boats in the harbor and send their crews ashore, where they choose up sides and work out past plays like this one. That's the harbor off in the distance, just beyond the goal line.
This was an old mill site in the 1870s. The company bought it, and we've been here ever since. If you'll come inside, I'll show you some of the pictures of the way the place used to look. Up on the wall is a scene of the old mill site when the mill was in operation. Photograph was taken from approximately the same place that the information center is right now. You'll notice the old sawdust burner and the sailing ships down there. The large building in the center is the old Admiralty Hotel. That is located right now about where the present beach club is situated.
When did you start?
We started our original planning in 1964.
What architect are you working with?
Right now we're working with Narramore, Bain, Brady, and Johansson on some additional land planning.
Are they the ones who are doing the, the bay houses?
They did the original plan. No, Robert Cooper, Bob Cooper is doing the bay houses, or has done the bay houses, the bay condominiums. We used Baumgartner and Associates to do the beach club building and to remodel the conference center.
What plans do you have?
The present community that we're working on is the second phase, which would be oriented around the golf course. We will have property developed around the golf course for both home sites and condominiums or townhouses. We have a third community which we would move into, which will pretty much be larger tracts of ground oriented toward the small estate-sized tracts. And the fourth community that we would be working on will be a combination multi-residence community with some shopping areas, a commercial facility for the people that have moved in here permanently to bring the stores and other convenience facilities closer to them.
Then Pope and Talbot's here to stay.
Pope and Talbot is here to stay. We have a definite commitment in the area, and with the amount of property that we own surrounding the area, together with what we've done already here, I think it's pretty obvious that we're here to stay.
And it's something you're proud of.
We're very proud of it.
I know you're putting your best people into it, and the architecture is, well, it's unique.
It's very unique, and the company has been in the area for so long, they don't feel that they could afford to do anything on a second-class basis. And we are very proud of what we've done so far. And Pope and Talbot has been here in the Puget Sound area since 1853, so that we do have a commitment in the area. We are well known. The company does have an integrity to maintain, and we really are trying our best at Port Ludlow to maintain the Pope and Talbot image.
Hey, this is a great day to maintain an image.
This is a great day to maintain the image.
Port Ludlow is a vacation land for everyone who comes here, even those who stay here all the time. Now, some discovered it a long time ago, and they've never bothered to look for any place else. There is a tendency when you're presenting a point of view on a film like this to exalt the advantages.
I'd rather talk about, I think, the disadvantages, because there are some very obvious ones I think should be pointed out. The disadvantages to Port Ludlow are that it's located in an area of relatively poor weather. The whole Pacific Northwest, western Washington and Oregon receives a much higher rainfall and more overcast days than other parts of the country. If this port and property were located in an area of weather similar to Florida or Southern California, it would be so ideal that it would have been developed a long, long time ago. But fortunately, Port Ludlow is located up in what is called the rain shadow of the Olympics. So in comparing it with other areas of the Northwest, it probably has less rainfall than Seattle or Portland would receive. I think the statistics are that we receive about 27 inches of rainfall a year, and Seattle and Portland have somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 inches of rainfall a year. So although it's a disadvantage, it's not as much of a disadvantage as some other areas of the Puget Sound. The other major disadvantage, particularly from people from the Seattle area, is that to get to Port Ludlow you have to take a ferry boat and the floating bridge, both of which there is a fairly high toll involved. Or the other apparent disadvantage to ferry boat and bridge travel is that it's time consuming, but it's a much more relaxed way of traveling than having to drive a high-speed freeway. It also, of course, consumes today far less gas. So in essence, a commuter to Port Ludlow really only has to spend about 20 minutes on the road for an hour and 15-minute trip, and the rest of it is spent reading the paper or having a sandwich on a very comfortable ferry, which in itself is a pleasant way to travel this day and age.
I asked Peter Pope, who is chairman and chief executive officer, if he's a swamp peddler.
If my great-grandfather was to hear that after having founded Port Gamble and watched it grow and become the community it is today, and having acquired 85,000 acres in the area and seen the quality of Port Ludlow, I think he would climb out of his grave and come after me with a meat axe if he thought we were swamp peddlers.
This is Port Ludlow as it is today, and maybe it's a place you belong. Now, it's not our intention to sell you on the idea of Port Ludlow against your will, because either the Olympic Peninsula is your kind of place or it isn't, and no film is going to do more than show you some of the things that you may have missed. Now, if Port Ludlow looks as if it might be the place for you, come on over. Come on over in a boat. There's a place where you can tie up or drive over, take a ferry boat ride, come across a bridge, stay in one of the condominiums, or you can fly over. You may decide that this is it.